Ladies and gentlemen, something just happened in Texas that has political commentators, activists, and lawmakers across the country all talking at once. And when I say talking at once, I mean the kind of political noise that really makes cable news look like a quiet library. Because voters in the lone state of Texas, they just sent a message that landed right in the middle of the state legislature, right on the desk of Texas Governor Greg Abbott, and right in the mailbox, right in the inbox of Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. And let me go ahead and say the response it wasn't subtle. We're talking about votes, investigations, new legislation, and a debate that stretches from Dallas to Austin, Texas, and even all the way up to Washington, D.C., where President Donald J. Trump's administration has made border enforcement and national sovereignty a top priority again. And right in the center of this debate are organizations like CARE, the controversial East Plano Islamic Center, a proposed development called Epic City, and the broader national conversation about Sharia law, immigration policy, and constitutional authority. Now, here's the thing, guys. Whether you agree with what Texas is doing or not, one thing is undeniable. Something big just shifted. And by the time we're done today, you're going to understand exactly why lawmakers in Texas, activists in Florida, and political leaders in Michigan are all suddenly paying very close attention. Now, before we dive in, take a quick second, subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on the stories that the corporate media somehow always forgets to cover. Yeah. And if by the end of the show you enjoyed it, I would totally appreciate it if you dropped a like on the way out. All right, I want to go ahead and start with the moment that set everything off, because this story begins with a vote, not in Washington, not on CNN, not on social media, a vote by Texas voters. So during the Texas Republican primary, voters were asked about Proposition 10. The question was very simple. Should Texas take steps to prevent Sharia law from influencing Texas courts? Now watch this, all right? The result wasn't close. It wasn't even a debate. Nearly 95% of Republican voters said yes. 95%. That is not a normal vote. That is a political thunderclap. Now here's why this matters. When voters send a message like that, the Texas Republican Party listens. And once it enters the party platform, the Texas legislature suddenly has a green light to act. Translation? Texas politicians now have political power and political cover to move legislation. And once this happens, the debate exploded nationwide. Because when something big shifts in Texas, the whole country notices.
We introduced legislation in Congress to take away the tax status for CARE. I introduced legislation to pause all immigration until we've gotten our house in order to stop what is happening to this great country and this great state. To be very clear, when you talk to the experts, the Muslim Brotherhood has a specific plan to Islamify the state of Texas. You're seeing it unfold in Dallas-Fort Worth right now. There are no-go zones where women don't want to go here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. There are people that are listening to prayer calls. We are having to deal with a massive change in our culture because we haven't recognized that there is a war being carried against us. If you're Attorney General, you have enormous power to follow the money. And as Attorney General, I will go after the 600 plus organizations that are advancing Sharia, undermining Western civilization, using the full power of the office.
Now, the next question. Why did lawmakers push this issue in the first place? Now, supporters say it's simple. The Constitution. According to many lawmakers in the Texas legislature, the U.S. Constitution and the Texas Constitution already established the only legal framework the courts can use. One system, one law. That's the argument. Supporters say if alternative legal systems begin influencing decisions, even informally, it creates confusion. Different standards, different rulings, different explanations. And lawmakers say that the safest move is to stop that possibility before it ever even becomes a court case. They call it a proactive leadership. In other words, handle the problem early. Now, critics obviously disagree with that. And politically, the momentum shifted fast after that 95% vote. And suddenly, this wasn't just a theory. It became a real legislative fight in Austin. But here's where things really got attention. Because once people started digging into the issue, a set of numbers started circulating. And those numbers made a lot of people stop and say, hey, wait a minute. This is where the conversation really started picking up steam. Because once people started looking into the issue, a few numbers started circulating that caught everybody's attention. First, the number of mosques in Texas. Some estimates floating around in testimony and reports are saying that there are roughly 330 to 350 mosques across the state. Now, Texas is a huge state, so that number by itself really doesn't necessarily shock people. But then came the next number, around 650 Islamic nonprofit organizations operating statewide. This is where lawmakers started asking questions about funding and influence. Now, according to testimony referenced before the Texas House Judiciary Committee, roughly $4 billion in federal taxpayer money since 2017 has been directed to various Islamic nonprofit groups that are across the country. Now, supporters of these programs say that the funding goes to things like community services and humanitarian work. Critics say that the taxpayers deserve more transparency. Either way, those numbers got attention fast, because when you start talking about billions of dollars in taxpayer money, people naturally start asking questions. And speaking of questions, there's one document that activists keep bringing up again and again, a document connected to the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, quick pause for a second, guys. If you know somebody who's following Texas politics right now, send them this video. Seriously, text it to them, post it, share it, because the more people who understand what's happening in Texas, the more interesting this conversation gets. All right, so let's talk about this document, okay? So activists pushing for restrictions often bring up something called the 1991 Muslim Brotherhood Explanatory Memorandum. Now, this document became controversial because it was entered as evidence in a U.S. federal court case years ago. So in that memo, the Muslim Brotherhood described a long-term strategy that they referenced, that they referred to as being a civilization jihad. Now, supporters of the document's interpretation say it shows a plan to gradually influence Western institutions. Now, critics are saying that this memo is misunderstood or it's taken out of context, but regardless of where people stand, the document keeps popping up in debates, especially in discussions about influence, immigration, and cultural change. And once the memo started circulating again in Texas policy decisions, it added fuel to an already heated debate. But believe it or not, the issue didn't really explode until something happened much closer to home. Not in Washington, not in some think tank, at a local school board meeting. That's when things got really loud. Now, before we get into this next part of the story, I want to share something that honestly shocked me when I heard it. So a man walked up to the pharmacy counter expecting his usual $10 prescription refill. You know, the same refill that he's been getting for years. But this time the pharmacist told him something very different. The price had jumped from $10 to $164. Why? Because his Medicare plan had quietly changed and he had no idea about it. So he did something millions of seniors end up doing in that situation. He skipped the medication for 2 weeks. 2 whole weeks. Now, you'd probably agree with me that no one should find out that their medication price changed only after they're standing at the pharmacy counter in front of everybody, right? And you probably also agree with this too. Skipping medication because of a surprise cost increase is probably something that no senior should ever have to deal with, which is why I partnered with Chapter. Chapter helps people review their Medicare coverage ahead of time, so surprises like that don't happen. Most people are already calling the phone number at the bottom of your screen right there, 909-563-8279, or they're clicking the link down below in the description to go to askchapter.org/Ron to have Chapter check their coverage for free, by the way. It only takes a few minutes and it could save you a lot of headaches later, let me tell you. All right, so let's get back to the story. So now this is the moment where the issue stopped being abstract policy and it suddenly became personal, because the debate moved from the Texas legislature straight into a local Texas school board meeting. Parents showed up upset, very upset. Why? Because some parents claim that their local Texas public school district had distributed materials connected to Islamic culture and law. Now, according to parents speaking at the meeting, students were given pamphlets discussing Sharia law, along with information about Islam and in some cases, even hijabs.
People there demanding answers tonight from district leaders regarding a religious group recently handing out Islamic faith materials to students at Wiley East High School. That incident went viral on social media 2 weeks ago. The district tonight says policies were not properly followed, and they told our Aaron Jones that changes are going to be made.
Because this is just wrong, guys. It's wrong on every level.
At Tuesday's school board meeting, it was a packed house. Many attendees questioning how the outside organization Why Islam was able to set up a table on campus during school hours earlier this month without district approval. In a viral video, the president of the school's Republican club describes what he says he saw.
And they were giving jobs to girls out throughout the high school, and they were giving out Qurans, and they also had pamphlets about Sharia law.
Wiley East student Camden Campbell is here with his father.
When I found out, it was pretty shocking.
My main concern is kind of the same as his. It was basically, how did they get in and then come back and say, well, we didn't know what they had. The other side of it was the Sharia law pamphlets.
Members of the Islamic community also sharing their thoughts.
I don't think anybody was converting them into Islam. This has gone so blown out of proportion, and it's just the current environment we're in.
It's disheartening. You know, our kids go to school wanting to go to a safe space, wanting to be taught and loved just as any other student.
The district says the Why Islam visitors checked in through the front office and were processed through their screening system, but a staff member didn't verify that the required guest speaker approval process had been completed. The staff member was placed on leave pending an investigation.
So the incident reportedly happened around World Hijab Day. Now, supporters of the program said that the goal was education and cultural awareness. Critics said that it crossed the line. And when parents confronted the school principal and district officials, the meeting quickly turned heated. So this is where you start to see the real pattern in American politics. National debates almost always start the same way, not in Washington, at school board meetings. Because when parents believe that their kids are involved, the temperature rises fast. But as loud as that meeting was, something even bigger was already developing just outside Dallas. That is where the story really gets more interesting. So now I want to talk about the project that really caught the attention of state officials. It's called Epic City. The development was connected to the East Plano Islamic Center, often called Epic, one of the largest mosques in the Dallas area.
Welcome to the future of living. Welcome to Epic City. Nestled in the heart of Josephine, Texas, it is about 20 miles and 20 minutes from Epic. Commercial areas.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Welcome to Epic 2.0.
And the proposal was ambitious. I mean, we're talking about a planned 400-acre development in the suburbs outside Dallas, Texas, specifically in Collin County and Hunt County. Plans reportedly included housing, schools, businesses, and community spaces. Now, supporters described Epic City as a normal residential development built around a religious community. Nothing unusual. But critics raised concerns. They worried that the development could become a kind of a religious enclave, potentially influenced by Sharia law. And once those concerns started circulating, the story jumped from local planning boards straight to the desk of the Texas Attorney General. So when the Attorney General of Texas gets involved, you already know things are about to escalate, because the next move came from Ken Paxton. That is when the story shifted from debate to investigation. All right, so this is where the story moves from talk to action, because once the controversy around Epic City started spreading, the issue landed on the decks of Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. So Paxton, he didn't ignore it. He announced that his office would begin reviewing the legality of the Epic City development. Now, this doesn't mean that the project was automatically illegal, but the state wanted answers. They wanted questions answered about the zoning laws, questions about financing, questions about who exactly was behind the project. And so the state officials also started examining whether any foreign funding could be connected to the development. Because under Texas law, large land developments tied to outside influence can trigger additional scrutiny. Now, again, supporters of the project say it's simply a residential community. Anybody believing that? Critics say that the state needs to verify exactly how it would operate. So Paxton's office began digging. And the moment the Texas Attorney General gets involved, things change quickly. Because now it's not just a debate anymore, it's a legal review. But the Attorney General wasn't the only Texas official stepping in, because soon the issue reached the office of Governor Greg Abbott. That's when the state law entered the picture.
Well, in part by that statement, but also in part by information that we've gathered, there appear to be multiple violations that have taken place here. One is information has been provided to investors that appears to be misleading. Another is they appear to be in violation of fair housing laws. Also, we found that, they talk about doing all this building, but they don't have any building permits to actually do any building, and they have challenges even getting those building permits. Believe this or not, we've even received information that they may have been conducting a funeral home without legal authority. Bottom line, Laura, is that there so many questions arose, especially information that we received, that led us to need to call the elite Texas Rangers to conduct a criminal investigation to find out if criminal laws in Texas have been violated.
Now, if there's one thing Texas Governor Greg Abbott is known for, it's this. When an issue becomes politically explosive in Texas, Abbott moves fast. And this is exactly what happened here. So Governor Greg Abbott supported new legislative efforts designed to increase scrutiny on certain types of large-scale developments tied to foreign funding or religious governance models. Now, the goal here, according to the supporters in the Texas legislature, was simple. Make sure every development in Texas operates fully within state and federal constitutional law. No parallel systems, no legal confusion, just the same rule book for everyone. So Greg Abbott and lawmakers, they say that this is not about targeting religion. It's about protecting the Texas Constitution and the U.S. Constitution. So now critics obviously disagree and say that the policies are unfair and they're unfairly targeting Muslim communities. But politically speaking, the momentum inside Texas was clear. The vote happened. The investigation began. The governor stepped in. And suddenly, the conversation expanded beyond development projects straight into the bigger national debate, a debate about immigration, borders, and national identity. And that debate is something that President Donald J. Trump's administration has been talking about nonstop, which kind of brings us to the next part of the story, because the immigration issue is where things really heat up. So now this is where the conversation gets bigger, because once the debate started around developments and legal systems, it quickly collided with another issue that's already front and center in American politics: immigration. And in Texas, immigration is not some distant policy discussion. It's daily life. I mean, look, Texas shares a massive border with Mexico. Border crossings, enforcement, asylum claims. These are real issues that Texans see and deal with every single day. Supporters of the new measures, they're saying that the debate about Sharia law and community development connects to a larger question: assimilation. Should new arrivals adopt American civic culture, or should communities be allowed to operate under their own cultural systems? Now, ICE, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, they have been part of this debate for years. And under President Donald J. Trump, border enforcement and immigration law have once again become major national priorities. Trump's administration has repeatedly emphasized stronger borders and stricter immigration enforcement. Supporters say this protects national sovereignty. Critics say it goes too far. But no matter how you slice it, immigration is now deeply tied to this entire Texas debate. And then something happened that poured gasoline on the conversation: an indictment right in the capital of Texas. Now, let me ask you something real quick. Every month that mortgage payment shows up, right? And it's the same story again. Thousands of dollars leaving your account year after year for 30 years. Now, most people think that the only way to get rid of a mortgage faster is to triple their monthly payment, drastically cut down their lifestyle, or dump every single dollar of their savings into the loan. But you'd probably agree with me, like most families can't simply live like that, right? And you'd probably also agree with me too that, being tied to a mortgage for 3 decades feels like a financial weight you just can probably never escape. This is exactly why I created something called the Mortgage Eliminator. It's a 4-step system that shows homeowners how to eliminate their mortgage in just a few years instead of 30. So click the Mortgage Eliminator link down below to learn more. Now, this part of the story raises serious concerns because the reports began circulating about a violent incident in Austin, Texas. Details are still being debated in many places, but according to early reports referenced in discussions around the issue, a suspect allegedly committed an attack while claiming religious motivation.
On Sunday, APD responded to multiple 911 calls reporting a shooting outside of Buford's at 700 West 6th Street. APD officers, along with the Austin Travis County Emergency Medical Services, arrived on the scene within 57 seconds, located multiple victims who were shot, and immediately began rendering first aid. The investigation revealed that a black Cadillac SUV was traveling southbound on Rio Grande Street when it pulled alongside Buford's, and the driver of this vehicle began shooting a semi-automatic handgun into the crowd of people that were standing outside of the bar. Several individuals were struck. The vehicle then continued westbound on West 6th and parked near the intersection of West 6th Street and Wood. The suspect then exited the vehicle armed with an AR-15 rifle. The suspect fired at a pedestrian, striking them, then walked back toward the bar. As additional officers arrived, they were directed by the suspect's location by brave people that were caught in this nightmare, and they worked to move bystanders to safety and establish a secure perimeter. At 2:03, 3 officers located the suspect near the intersection of West 6th and West Avenue. The suspect discharged his firearm at the direction of the officers. The 3 officers discharged their firearms, striking him multiple times. Officers approached the suspect, took him into custody, requested medical assistance. The suspect was later pronounced deceased at the scene. Our suspect is a 53-year-old male.
Now, whenever something like this happens, emotions rise immediately. Law enforcement in Austin, Texas began investigating, politicians began responding, and the debate around security, immigration, and cultural integration intensified overnight. Supporters of stronger restrictions pointed to the incident as evidence that communities need to stay vigilant. Critics warned against painting entire religious groups with the actions of one person, but politically the timing mattered because the incident happened right as the Texas legislature, Ken Paxton, and even Governor Greg Abbott were already dealing with the Epic City controversy, which meant that the debate instantly grew larger. Now, it wasn't just about development projects anymore. At this point, it became part of a national argument about security, borders, and cultural change. And this is exactly why other states started paying attention, especially places like Florida and Michigan. Now, here's where the story stops being just about Texas, because once the debate exploded in Austin and the Texas legislators started moving, other states began watching very closely. 2 states in particular, Florida and Michigan. By the way, let me know where you're watching from today. Let's go ahead and start with Michigan. Over the past several years, several cities in Michigan have elected large numbers of Muslim officials to local government. Now, this alone is not unusual in American politics. Communities vote for leaders that they trust, period. But those elections sparked national discussions about religious influence in local policy, especially when debates around cultural issues and religious values began appearing in city council meetings. Meanwhile, in Florida, state leaders have been watching developments like Epic City in Texas very closely. Why? Because Florida has also seen rapid population growth and new religious communities forming around large development projects. So lawmakers there are asking a similar question. How do states balance religious freedom, which is protected under the U.S. Constitution, with concerns about parallel legal systems or foreign influence? And this is why what happened in Texas is suddenly getting national attention way beyond its borders. Because if Texas sets a model, other states may follow, which brings us to the bigger picture. So when you step back and you look at the whole story, something pretty clear emerges. Texas didn't just pass a vote. Texas started a national debate. You have Texas voters sending a massive signal with that 95% primary vote. You have Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton opening an investigation into Epic City. You have Governor Greg Abbott supporting legislative efforts to tighten rules around developments and legal frameworks. And suddenly lawmakers in other states, Florida, Michigan, and beyond, they started asking similar questions. How do we protect religious freedom? How do we maintain constitutional law? And how do we handle immigration and cultural change in a way that keeps communities stable? Now, these are not small questions at all. And they're not going to go away anytime soon, because in today's political climate, especially under President Donald J. Trump's administration, where border security and national sovereignty are front and center issues, debates like this are only going to grow louder. So whether you agree with Texas or disagree with Texas, one thing is clear. Texas just moved the national conversation forward, and when Texas moves politically, the rest of the country usually follows. Now, before you go, if you enjoyed breaking this story down with me, don't forget to hit the like button on the way out. It really does help the channel grow. And if you want to see more deep dives into the political stories that the mainstream media barely touches, be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss the next one. Appreciate you guys watching. I'll see you on the next video.